Okay, it's the first time that Bert had used a reamer, and what we had him do was drill out the hole and then bore it, and I had him bore it so that there was 30 thousandths left to go, and then use the reamer. Part of the instruction that I was giving him on this reamer, as this one here I had just done, part of the instruction is to run a slower RPM than you would with drilling, and to keep a steady feed pressure. You go with it a little bit quicker. And the reason you do that is this little cutting angle at the front here has to continuously be into the angle to where it's helping it center. If you sit there and wait for a long time, these blades, their weight, any movement that's out will start wearing it a little bit. There's some art to it. Of course, if you have it set up on a machine and the machine's doing the same thing every time, it will just work. But if you drag along too slow, you will get to where, because the whole side can cut to make sure the hole's big enough. Also, imagine if you're off center. Let's say, like, instead of boring that out, if it was running like this, then it would have found the center and then tried to come back to the full cut as it kept wobbling around, and it would have made a bigger hole. Along with the fact that it wouldn't have been in center as it tried to run out, it would have made a bigger hole because of being off center. Same if the spindle, if the drill chuck was off center, it would have cut a bigger hole. A lot of times on this, and something that we looked for, but for some reason we didn't have them, was our over and under reamers. And they make those because sometimes on your setup you have little inaccuracies that make things bigger than what you're planning on. So you'll have a set that's over and under, and usually they'll be under by 1/1000th or over by 1/1000th is the size. Some of them are under and over by 0.5 At any rate, I couldn't find either of them that I had. I ordered a couple of new ones. I think the new ones are 0.5 over and under because that was just what they're offering right now. I was rather disappointed in what I could see in currently ready stock for high quality reamer sets. I didn't see much right now, which was a little disturbing to me. Usually there's all kinds of them out there. There were a lot of M2 imports with different brands on them, and they will work. They're high-speed steel, but when you start getting in the harder material, they just don't hold up very long. I wanted to spend a little bit this time and buy some better ones, and I just didn't see a lot of those, so we didn't replenish a lot of the reamers I was planning on. We just got an over and under set of just generic M2, because that's what was available. Now, the point of this being, we did that one. We'll get back on looking at our impellers a little bit later. But I wanted to generally talk about reamers some. So, talking about reamers, we have to go to reamers. Lots of different types of reamers. It's not just one reamer. A big tall drawer. Now these we've talked about a little bit before, and these are taper pin reamers, and they cut all the way down. Now with these ones, you would not be trying to make sure you rush your cut so that you've got the end guiding and holding it centered, because you don't have an end cut. On these, you cut along the whole length. It's tapered the whole way really slightly. What they're for is for taper pins. And taper pins are real handy for aligning things. Very slight taper all the way from the smallest one to the biggest one. They're all the same taper. So if you start out something that you wanted to pin together with this little hole, and over the last 400 years, the hole kept getting bigger as people beat things up, you could still just keep making it a little bit bigger and the same taper would fit, but of course you need a bigger pin for the bigger one. So, and you can get reamers out of different material. This one is carbide. They would call this reamer, and the one that Bert was using over there, as a chucking reamer. Now, the names cross over a little bit from what is realistic to, because this is a chucking reamer. There's also chucking reamers with Morris taper shanks on them. Same basic straight reamer, but you have a Morris taper shank instead of actually a chuck, but it's still considered a chucking reamer. And then you have a real problem if you want to find such reamers if you're looking at them on eBay, because if you look up Morris taper and chucking reamer, you will end up with a whole bunch of reamers that are meant for reaming out the Morris taper socket, not for the fact that it has a Morris taper shank, which it may or may not. There's also, I don't know that I have them here. Somewhere I probably have some. There are, and this is actually an arbor for similar. I don't know if this is for a reamer. This is probably for a mill, but this is a arbor where you would have, similar to this, you would have an arbor style reamer. And oh, there's a certain name for those that's out of my mind right now. Why is it gone? Shell reamer. And that's what they call them, is a shell reamer that goes onto an adapter like this, and that's because all you've got is a shell for the cutting element. And so right here would be just the cutting element that would go onto it. We have got, of course, there's helix, the helix that's in your reamer. Now, these were straight flute, and these are helical flute. And you can have helical flute both ways. You can have helical flute like this, which generally provides a smoother cut, as the rotation is this way, but the helix angle pushes the other way, so that it doesn't try and drag in hard. You have to actually push it in. So it generally will make a smoother cut, but not easier to cut. We also have reamers like this, and here's another one. These are bridge reamers. These were originally meant, now this last part from around in here down to here is full diameter. And these will be real close to the size. This one, I'm guessing, is a 7/8. It's 1 inch. Okay. Had a few of those, but anyway, it's 1 inch. And what this is for is you're working on a bridge in 1905, and you have two members that holes were punched back at the factory about the right place. We got things kind of lined up, but they're not exactly right, and you take an air drill, you and your buddy hanging onto this thing, you're 600 foot over something, and you drill and ream through with this so it lines up and makes a nice 1 inch hole for your rivet to fit. You also would do this for drive bolts, but it allows you to take a couple of pretty much misaligned holes, go from a relatively small size and bring it out to a nice round hole so that it fits tight to hold things together. Now there's another version that we have right here, which is the same idea, except these are shorter, and these usually have straight shanks, but the big thing is that they're shorter in relation to what they are, and these are car reamers. And why this is a car reamer and this is a bridge reamer is because, yeah, it even says car reamer. It was looking a little long for as small as it is, but the big reason why this is a car reamer is because it's shorter and it's for working inside railroad cars. So if you were working way, newer time, 1930, for a Pullman car, and you were working on the frames on railroad cars for all your fancy dining cars, you'd be using these for putting your rivets in again for your suspension. And let me see, I know in my mind I had all kinds of different cool things about rivets, reamers. This is one of many taper reamers. They call this one just a general mechanics reamer, just for enlarging things roughly, and it's kind of a crude tool. And if you go to garage sales, you'll end up with some of those. Not used in machine shops too much. Let me see this one here. This one is of specific interest, and I don't know if I have. We had a whole bunch of these out looking for it. I need to bring in, we've got more of these good organizers, and we really need to bring in 2 of them and put our reamers in there and spread out our end mills a little better. But Bert, what corner do we put them in? We have them in the storage connex. So that's why they're not in here. And we really do believe in organization, but we believe even more in being a hoarder and having lots of stuff. And the two conflict. You know, I love to have it organized, I really do, but then, it's got a new reamer! Woo, for me. So, okay, back to reamer types and things. This one here is a special, sort of special, but standard. We got a whole bunch of these. This is a pipe reamer. And what this for is a pipe tap is tapered. And of course, as you cut, the front part of your threads are working a lot to keep cutting up material that's not going to be a threaded shape. So to get the general taper to start with, and on bigger ones, a lot of times you'll cut them, just cut the taper on a machine, on a taper attachment or something. But these are made so that you can pre-ream the taper, and then you don't have to sit there and rotate so many times to get your pipe threads cut in. And I don't have all of those, but we got close to all of them up to 4-inch. I think there's 2 sizes I'm missing. I don't remember which ones. I think I'm missing 2 sizes. Now, back to these ones here, which these particular ones are Snap-on. Blue Point, it's not Snap-on. Sort of the same. Okay, now, these are adjustable reamers. And Critchley, that was the common brand that made them. So they made these for, and they've been copied a lot over the years. As far as standard sets, for whatever reason, the Surplus Snap-on seem to be the ones I've found the best as far as finding these. Now, you will see these all the times in their time, and they're made a lot with just this part here, and the end piece, which is a separate piece, will not be on them. The way you'll see these a lot of times is just that part, and you don't get the extension. Now, the blades go in little slots. The slot is tapered inside, and you adjust these to make them bigger. The front part of each of these blades has a little extra taper kicked to it to guide it a little bit. So, although this one looks like it's more straight, they may have 2 different versions of these blades. The set here, it looks like these are straight all the way down, and actually the front of it is cutting just the same as the reamer that we were just looking at with Bert. And no, that's not cutting. That's double-sided there. Okay, I'm gonna put it back together. If you leave these apart, the blades will fall out because this washer is tapered and holds in the reamer blades. And they have a tendency to be out of round. These things are a nightmare to use, you know, as far as the basic reamer. And we'll explain a little bit more about this extension on here because that's really important. And I want to make a comparison to a different type, and you'll see these, for most of people, consider these adjustable reamers. There is another reamer, but it does expand. And it's interesting, I hadn't noticed the actual brand that was making them, or it could have, well, it says Critchley type, not Critchley brand. So, because I have noticed Snap-on is a little bit, they even have one set I saw when I was looking through some stuff on the internet, they had some of these that they considered valve guide reamers, which were just these with no other guiding to it, which is not really what you would want to use for a valve guide usually. These don't make a real good cut. Most of the time they are a nightmare to use. You'll have one of the blades for some reason is out further than the other. So it's just catching on 2 and rocking and not really wanting to do a good job. But they do cut and they're portable. The big problem with these is the body is just soft steel. This right here, I've had a lot of times this will just twist off altogether when you're in a hard cut. So you can't take much at a time. So while they're meant to be a hand tool and they're set up for a tap here, I generally put them in a machine and chuck them. And the fact of being higher speed allows you to get in and bounce over the bumps quicker, easier than if you actually turn it by hand. They're going to tear up, they're going to degrade, they're kind of a problem. Now, what this is about right here, this is a guide. And what you're doing is when you first start into a hole, you have two holes you're trying to ream. And what these were specifically, one of the things they're meant for, and normally what Snap-on was selling them for, is for old style front axles, straight axles. And you had a bronze bushing on the top and bottom, a little thrust bearing, and a straight pin that goes in between them. When they give you those bronze bushings, they are undersized and they figure you're going to smush them a little bit putting them in too. So what you do, you're trying to, on one of your knuckle eyes here, it'll be just similar to what a four-wheel drive has on a closed knuckle, which probably very few of you know too. Some of you do. Anyway, there's an eye up here and an eye a little bit lower. They'll be canted a little bit for the, they're canted anyway, yeah, for whatever reason on the angle. So they're canted, and what you're doing though, you're trying to get the two to line up. So what you've got is you got this piece here which has two different little tapers to it, and you would have that in the hole on the one side, this on the other one, and you'd work your way through so that this reams through the one side. Then you turn it around and you pick up on the hole that you just did and you come through with the other one. The idea being that you keep the two in line even though you're only reaming one part of the eye at a time. Now, there is, while I'm mentioning that, we're not going to go into hones today, but we will go into hones one of these days. I promised that once before. I wanted to see if I got my AMCO, no, that's not one, this is one. Okay, this will be an AMCO small bore hone, I do believe. And the AMCO small bore hone is actually made for doing exactly the same thing on your front ends, and these are no longer made. But this, instead of being a reamer that is guided, it is a hone that is guided. Now, these are kind of cool, but they're also kind of sucky. I went ahead and collected these along with some other AMCO hones that I absolutely love and are also not made anymore. But these ones don't hold up super well because they just have sandpaper for the stones. Now, maybe you can replace that sandpaper. Yeah, you might be able to. I've never actually pulled one apart. I've always just replaced. See, they're made with a pre-sandpaper. It's glued on there. Yeah, so you'd have to re-glue sandpaper on it. And I never have done that. I've used these very little and been leery of them because they're not as strong as some of the others. But they do the same thing in a honing operation. Back to reamers. Too many different, no, we're doing reamers today, John. Okay, expansion reamers. See, normally those are considered adjustable because they're made to be adjusted. And somewhere in my collection here that's laying out disorganized, we had, I think, one expansion reamer. Nope, not yet. Okay, anyway, an expansion reamer will have some way of either a tapered plug, they'll be split, and they'll have like a tapered plug that you drive in or thread in. The most common will be they'll thread in right at the end here. And real common is they'll be solid, they'll be affixed back here, and then they'll just thread out at the end. And the reason for that is not to expand it out to an adjustable size, but most of your wear is going to happen at the end. You expand it out and then you regrind it precision so it's straight, so it is the size it was when it was new. And so that's normally what's considered an expandable reamer as opposed to an adjustable reamer that's meant for a range of sizes. Now, the expandable reamers in industry are used lots of times for what they're not meant to do, and I've done it too. You know, you got it real close, you don't have that half-thousandths oversized reamer, and just tweak it a little bit without regrinding it. The problem with that then, though, is that the end is bigger and the part back here is smaller. So you don't have the full support as it goes through. It depends on what you're doing. It does get you out of a jam and works a lot of the time. I've done it a lot in industry in the past. Not currently in a situation where I'm needing to do those production setups. So that is not a serious concern there. Here's one of the other ones again without the extension on it for the guide. And they size these by letters. They're standard letter numbers to cover a certain range. We've got a bigger set than that one too. We got 2 or 3 sets of them around, well, right here's, yeah. Under here are more of those. This one is new. And that one goes to a K. Whatever a K is. I think I think it starts out on the A for the small ones. That goes A to K. I think there's bigger ones too, but anyway. Seems like I had something more. Ooh, that's quite a little reamer. 2 1/16. Don't know when we'll use it. It probably came with other stuff is my guess. I don't remember needing to buy that for anything particular. Oh, what else in reamers? I don't know. It seemed like there was something else. I'm going to go in here and look at pipe reamers again, other ones, just to see if it jogs my memory of something else. Don't want to have to write all this stuff down. But yeah, pipe reamers, we put them in with the taps. And stuff. Okay. I don't know. Seems like there was more on reamers. Oh well. That's what you get today. Mentioned carbide reamers. Just didn't mention that some of them are brazed. Oh yeah, I do have a couple of things. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. A couple other things. Couple of other things. Yes. No. Yes. Okay, these are not reamers, but I saw a lot of people listing them as reamers. So this is a counterbore cutter, and it is piloted on this diameter, and then it cuts for socket head screws. Saw a lot of people mentioning this as reamers. Now, you could use this for reaming, even though it's specifically a socket head counterbore, because if you had this size hole, it would essentially ream the hole to the next size up. It doesn't have to be officially a reamer to do reaming, but it is a socket. And now, what I was going to mention with that, we should be able to find some of those, is you have some more of these, like the pipe ones that were special reamers for different things. There will be stepped reamers. And I don't think, maybe it was in the drawer that I know I have some stepped reamers here. I know we do. That one's not. I know there's one that I was using, so it's in an end mill holder. And I kind of wanted to make a specific mention about these stepped reamers. This one. Yeah, because if we see this one here, this is actually a stepped reamer. It has a diameter that cuts, an angle in between, and another diameter that cuts up here. So it has 2 different steps. It will cut those steps. It is a stepped reamer. As opposed to like the socket head counterbore tools, those, even if we consider them a reamer, are not stepped reamers. They are piloted because the front part doesn't cut. On this one, everything cuts. It starts cutting right from there, from a diameter below what you're trying to get all the way up to the largest part. So since it all cuts, it is a stepped reamer instead of a piloted reamer. And a lot of times you also, if you need to on something, you can add a pilot pretty easy. Drill a hole in the end, tap something in, silver brace, a piece on, whatever. Make something for a pilot is pretty easy. It can be hard to make a proper stepped reamer, but making one that has a pilot is relatively easy if you need that for some reason. Now, we'll go over here. I believe that we have some of the porting reamer tools, which a lot of times they just call them a O-ring Boss porting tool. And they are hydraulic block off, tape, saw, channel lock vice grips. I think we put it in, because I keep the British / metric separate. Here we go, British standard pipe, yep. Okay, in here, I have porting tools also. And so this is meant for an O-ring boss port. So this will be, this will cut out a clearance size. This will be right for a tap. And this is not actually one of the ones. This is the one. This is one right here. Yeah, more identifiable. Okay. This is the angle where an O-ring sets in for an O-ring boss fitting. This part here gets threaded. This is the actual port size, and then this just spot faces on the top of it. And so those are a type of a reamer, and they're specific. They made this one with 2 pieces of carbide instead of just 1 brazed on there, which is fine. And they're specifically for the O-ring boss hydraulic fittings. And if you're working with commercial shearing or commercial shearing copy type hydraulic pumps, you may very well be doing porting on those yourself, because that's part of what's neat on the commercial shearing, is where you can buy all the individual pieces and then assemble whatever pump you want out of parts off the shelf, so that you don't have to wait a week to get one. And that has just small side things while you're using your porting tool for, and you don't have to have a porting tool to do O-ring bosses. You know, I did them in a lot of shops before we even knew that those existed. I'm sure that they did, but none of the shops I was at knew it at the time. And pretty well everybody I know knows it now. And maybe that's because I told them, or maybe I'm just thinking that way. Take care.